Afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm Jim Inkster. This is the 35th show that Governor John Bel Edwards has done with listeners across the state and beyond, and it is the second one this year, and a few times over the course of the last 3 years, the governor has had a guest, and that is the case today. The governor will take questions of all kinds, but we're going to start with a discussion with a special guest. And, Governor, you have brought along one of your cabinet secretaries.
I have, Jim, and thank you. It's hard to believe it's 35 shows already, but I've got Secretary Marquita Walters of the Department of Children and Family Services who is with me today and to talk about some initiatives within Children and Family Services in Louisiana. And I'll tell you, Marquita and her staff there, all of our workers across the state, under some pretty tough circumstances, have really performed well over the last 3+ years and have totally reorganized the department to get people focused appropriately and make sure that we're doing a better job and that we're actually more accountable. But she's got some initiatives as it relates to foster care and got some information about adoptions out of foster care and some other things she's been working on. And I wanted her to be able to come in and share that with us. So Marquita, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. It's fun to be here.
Well, foster care, the age currently is 18, and there's going to be a change, it looks like.
We certainly hope so. We're going to bring a bill this session asking the legislature to change our law to raise the age from 18 to 21 for all youth that are in foster care.
And why?
Well, what we know about kids that leave us at 18 is that their outcomes are pretty poor. They become the kids that are homeless, that are sex trafficked, that go into our prison system, that eat up a lot of our benefits. They just think about when you were 18, were you ready to be all alone in this world without any kind of parental support?
The majority of states now go to 21. It's a relatively modest increase in cost. And it has actually been shown that it actually pays for itself because you incarcerate so many fewer people. So many fewer people need governmental assistance and demand health care and that sort of thing. What we know about going to, by the way, it's already 21 based on a change that we made last year for individuals who are still working towards a high school diploma or for a high-set equivalency, which used to be called the GED. So this would take the additional 18 to 21-year-olds and keep them in foster care. Only I think it's about 3% of foster care kids get into higher education currently. We just have to do better because the education, the training that comes through the higher education system is incredibly important to creating the opportunity that they need to be productive members of society. And so we know that's not happening. And this is not new to Louisiana. It's not different here. This is why the other states that have already done this did it. And it's certainly a worthy goal. And we're going to be working very hard to make this happen.
And Secretary Walters, you're involved in a variety of initiatives. Also, your office handles the food stamp program, and there's a development on that front as well.
Yes, we issued our March benefits. We will issue them early this year, trying to bridge the gap between the benefits that we had to issue early because of the government shutdown. When we issued February in January, that leaves a big gap for our clients to go from when they received them in February all the way if we waited until their normal release date. So we're releasing all benefits on March 1st and 2nd.
Is there any ballpark figure on the number of people involved in this?
We have about 800,000 people in the state that receive food stamps. It's a large group of people, and that would have been 57, almost 2 solid months that they would have gone without benefits if we were not doing this early release.
Close to 20% of the population, which tells us that we have and do live in a poor state.
Well, we've certainly had more than our fair share of poverty here in Louisiana for generations. There's no doubt about that. And this access to nutrition is incredibly important. And so we will load all of the benefits for March on the 1st and the 2nd. Without that, certain families would have to wait till as late as the 14th. And then after March, because thank goodness there's not a looming government shutdown, that the issues were resolved in Congress to keep the government open. Then in the following month, I believe, Marquita, the plan is to just get back on our normal schedule.
We'll either get back on normal or we'll release a little early around split the difference and do it around the 6th or the 8th. We're still trying to decide what's the best thing and working with our feds on that, because while this is a fully federal program, all the money that goes directly to clients are federal dollars, but the state manages the program, and so we have to work with the feds to figure out which way they think is the best way to go and approve that plan.
And Secretary, you also are encouraging people to restock shelves at food banks.
Absolutely.
Tell us why you feel that is a necessity.
Well, I think that, with the Christmas holidays, we really kind of depleted the food banks. And so there were a lot of people that were out of work during the shutdown, and they needed help with food. We had so many federal employees that live in our state that were not getting their paychecks. And so we're just trying to stock the shelves again to make sure that everybody that needed help or that needs it right now, waiting for those March benefits, that they're getting it. This is about the time that benefits would have been coming out in February, and we know that our clients probably used up a lot of their benefits early. And so we're just really wanting to help the food banks be ready to address any need that they might have.
And there's need for food banks, irrespective of the SNAP program. There's
Absolutely.
lots of individuals out there who on occasion need to call on a food bank, and all 5 of the regional food banks have told us that the shelves are barer than they want them to be, that they need some help. And I will tell you, the people of Louisiana responded so well over the holidays, just before Christmas. We're very, very generous, and we're just asking them to do that one more time so that we can get these shelves stocked again, because we've had the disasters around the country depleted the shelves earlier, and then it was the government shutdown.
Let's start with Margie in Lacombe. Margie, good afternoon. You're on Talk Louisiana.
Well, hello. Thank you. And I'm glad to be talking to the governor. And I think the program for the children and to help people is wonderful.
Thank you
But
very
I'm
much,
calling
Margie.
about it is a good thing. But I'm calling because I'm interested in something else that helps people. I'm a member of the Honey Island group of the Sierra Club. And last year we adopted Fontainebleau State Park because we saw it was getting kind of raggedy looking and needed help. And we went out there with all the budget cuts, and started trying to help plant some of the gardens and doing trail maintenance and things like that as volunteers. And in fact, we're going out this Saturday. Again, it'll be our first day this year. And we heard alarming news about Lieutenant Governor wanting to privatize the parks, and especially Fontainebleau, and that he has plans to basically cut down over 500 acres or so of woodlands in the park and turn it into a resort hotel. And that is not something we're real fond of. It's like the park is already one of the most beautiful parks in the country, really.
Well, Margie, thank you very much for calling. And I haven't heard any specific plans about Fontainebleau State Park as it relates to cutting down woods or building some sort of a resort, as you just mentioned. Certainly, I'll visit with the Lieutenant Governor and discuss those things. I do know that he is pursuing an opportunity through some legislation that was passed previously to establish public-private partnerships, so that certain activities at the parks get privatized as a way to provide revenue, so that he can keep the parks going and not have them subject to the uncertainty sometimes of just the budget cycles and declines in revenue, which if properly done, obviously would be a good thing. But I'm just unable to respond to the specifics of what you just mentioned, but I do want to thank you for your interest in the environment and in Fontainebleau State Park, and I share your opinion that is one of the crown jewels in the state of Louisiana.
You know that area pretty well, don't you?
Well, I do. I mean, that's where I'm from, over on the North Shore, and it is a beautiful state park, and it's historic as well.
Linda in New Orleans. Hi, Linda. You're on Ask the Governor.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I'm calling because I'm just a little bit concerned and maybe confused about the budget that you have to be proposing here in a few days. I know that by law the budget has to be balanced, so you cannot propose spending for anything that you don't see that you have income to cover, revenue. And I guess a big component of that then is the current and best information as to revenue that would be coming from the Revenue Estimating Conference. And as I have been reading, there are 4 people that make up that conference, and one of them has consistently refused to accept what seems to me to be the best, most current, updated information. So you're not going to be able to plan spending because this one person has refused to acknowledge what seems to me to be a pretty sure bet.
Well, Linda, you are right on your facts there. The Speaker of the House for several months now has refused to revise the forecast along with the recommendations that come from the 2 economists, one who works for the legislature, one works for the administration, and they advised the panel. Both know we have additional revenue come in because the economy is performing so much better than it was in the past, and better, quite frankly, than had been predicted earlier. And the economist who actually sits on the panel, one of the 4, he actually agrees with them, as do 2 other members. But for several months, the Speaker has refused to revise the forecast to adopt the forecast proposed by the economist. And he's indicated that he will do so, I think, in March or April. But at the end of the day, we are in so much better of a place than we were before. Our revenue is stable. The economy is performing well. And I will give the legislature our plan for the budget year that starts July the 1st. That'll happen at the Joint Legislative Committee on the Budget this Friday. And ultimately, considering the problems we've had over the last several years with budget cliffs and huge deficits forecasted, we don't have any of those problems, and I'm actually very optimistic we're going to be able to work through this. But there's a little gamesmanship going on, as you mentioned, and we're going to get past it, and we're going to have a responsible budget, and we're going to have one that increases pay for our teachers and our support workers in our schools as well.
James in Longview, Texas. Hi, James. You're on Ask the Governor with Governor John Bell Edwards.
Well, good afternoon, Jim, and Madam Secretary, and good afternoon, Governor Edwards.
Well, thank you very much, James. Good to hear from you again.
Yeah, it's good to hear you. Anyhow, Governor, I know you're going to hold a business summit. I believe it's tomorrow to link business leaders with government leaders, and I'm just wondering a few key points, say 3 or 4, that you particularly want to concentrate on at that conference.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, we have about 500 business people from all over the state of Louisiana who are registered. They're going to come into Baton Rouge tomorrow, and there'll be several different panel discussions. Some will just be on maintaining the current momentum we have in Louisiana. Others will be on things, for example, related to infrastructure, certain other initiatives that we have going on in Louisiana. And we're excited about that. And each panel discussion will be followed by an opportunity for those present to express any concerns or to convey any ideas that they have for the state of Louisiana so that we can continue this momentum that we have, because our economy is performing so much better. You know, for example, right now, GDP in the state of Louisiana is at an all-time high. Our economy has never been bigger than it is right now. At $250 billion. It's growing faster than all but 2 other states in the southeast region. Unemployment is down. We've had 15 straight months of year-over-year job growth. The folks working in Louisiana exceed 2 million, near an all-time high that was actually set last April, and hopefully we're going to get back there pretty soon. So we just want to maintain the momentum, and we want to hear from business folks, small and large and medium, from all across the state as to how we can best partner with them to do that. That'll all take place tomorrow, and I'm excited about this business summit. And James, thank you so much for your call.
Yeah,
again.
nice to hear from James. But as you know, Governor, some of your opponents are saying that the summit is political. How do you answer their charges?
Well, I mean, I've got 500 business folks coming from all over the state. They're representing various sectors of our economy, various geographic regions, and I suspect that there is some very small percentage of those people who have contributed to my campaign or support me openly and that sort of thing, and which I'm thankful for. But obviously, that's not the goal of the conference. The goal of the conference is to maintain the momentum that we have, to continue to build partnerships with the business community and to listen to their concerns and to consider whatever ideas they have for us. And we're going to be able to do that tomorrow in a conference that's going to last all day. And I'm excited. It's the sort of thing that we ought to be doing in Louisiana. And I think it says a lot about the business community when they respond. We have 500 pre-registered to come in tomorrow.
Marjorie in New Orleans. Hello, Marjorie. You're on Ask the Governor with Governor John Bell Edwards.
Hi, Governor. Thanks for taking my call.
Hi, Marjorie.
How are you? I would like to discuss with you Louisiana's first Fisher House that will have an upcoming groundbreaking in the fall of this year. The house will, be a comfort house for veterans, families, and the families of active duty military who will be able to stay temporarily at the facility while their loved one is in the hospital, either a veteran or an active duty military person. I think, as you know, we're going to have 16 suites, accommodate 32 family members every night. And I guess there are two questions I'd like to ask you about this, maybe three. First, I think you know about this and have spoken publicly at the Innovation Convention.
I have.
And we would love your support in an unveiling ceremony that is going to be at the VA. We're hoping for your schedule to accommodate us in March.
Well, Marjorie, thank you very much for the call. And Fisher House, that is an incredibly important place for veterans and their families, really, to be able to stay when a veteran's receiving care. We have this huge new, very nice Veterans Hospital in New Orleans, and I think the Fisher House that's going to be built there is going to be a blessing for a whole lot of folks. And I was fortunate enough in September to be able to have breakfast with Ken Fisher in New York, and that is the family behind the Fisher Houses, and I committed to him at that point that I would do everything that I could to promote the fundraising so that we can get this built in short order successfully, and we are looking forward to the ceremonial groundbreaking and ribbon cutting at the Fish House. Everything that we can do to promote it, and we're going to do that. As a veteran myself, it's really important to me that we take care of not just the veterans but their families, and when they travel and they need a place to stay in close proximity to a loved one who's in the hospital, the Fisher House does that better than anybody else anywhere. So I'm proud to partner with them.
Chris in Livingston. Hi, Chris. You're on the air with Governor John Bell Edwards.
Oh, good afternoon, and thank you for taking my call. I'm a teacher, and I just want to say that I think the windfall elimination provision is probably one of the most unfair pieces of legislation ever, in my opinion. I've put into Social Security my entire life thinking I was doing the right thing for my future, but I began teaching in Louisiana at 50, only to find out 6 years into my career that I was sacrificing my Social Security in order to teach. And I guess my question is, with all due respect, of course, who thought that this was a good idea?
Well, Chris, that happened so many years ago. I can't tell you who the actors were, but the state of Louisiana decades ago opted out of the Social Security system when given that opportunity. As a result, we don't pay into Social Security for state workers and for teachers. And, this is something that many people, not just yourself, but many people, state workers, school teachers for a long time have thought to be unjust and have tried to get it changed. And I can tell you that there are bills filed in every Congress because it's a federal matter now. Once the state opts out, any change would require federal government approval. It has to work its way through Congress. Bills are filed in every Congress. I don't think they're ever even heard in committee, and I suspect that's because there was a huge fiscal note or a cost associated with revising that windfall elimination provision that you're talking about. And so, but it hits a lot of folks. I can tell you that my mother was surprised as a retired state worker to find out that she didn't get my dad's Social Security after he died. So this is a big problem. It's going to require Congress to fix it. there's no shortage of bills. Those bills just don't move, unfortunately.
And you, as we head to the break, are continuing on your pledge to raise teacher pay.
Yes, we're going to raise teacher pay. Look, we're $2,200 below the Southern average now. We haven't given a raise in 10 years, other than 1.5 increases in the MFP, which is kind of complex, but only a portion of that, small portion of that, actually went to teacher pay. So we're now $2,200 below. I want to get $1,000 per teacher and $500 per support worker this year.
Marquita Walters, in her capacity, handles a lot of things important to people in our state, and one of those is adoption out of the foster care system. And how is this going?
This is going marvelously in Louisiana. For the past 3 years, we have set adoption records, and this past year we adopted 912 children out of the system. So that was 912 families new around Christmas trees that had their own special child with their family name.
How does that process work?
Well, in Louisiana, we dually certify you to foster and adopt. So if you're interested in becoming an adoptive parent, you go through the foster parent training, which is about a 14-week, 30-hour program, and you have a home visit, and you go through criminal history and background checks and get references, and then we match you up with children and put kids in your home, and you can, if you just want to adopt, then you can go that way and ask for only kids that are freed for adoption, or you can be a foster parent and maybe fall in love with the foster kid and adopt them.
But Jim, one of the most impressive things about this third record, this 912 adoptions in 2018, is that many of those children were older. Many of them had siblings. Many of them had learning disabilities, for example. So those are typically much harder to place with adoptive parents, and yet we still had that success. And Marquita works really hard. And look, we accept help. So Wendy's Wonderful Kids comes in. This is the Dave Thomas Foundation folks.
Right.
They come in and they help us, and they provide caseworkers who work specifically on some of these hardest to adopt kids, and it really works, and we're going to continue to focus on that because we think every child should have a forever home.
We had 52 youth that were adopted last year. That's a record as well. 52 teenagers that were adopted out of that 912. About half the kids in foster care are under 5. And so when we have a lot of teenagers, that's a group that's really hard to place because a lot of kids really want younger children.
877-217-5757 is your number for Ask the Governor, and Mackenzie in Baton Rouge has been waiting. Mackenzie, you're on the air with the Governor and with Secretary Walters. Hi, Mackenzie.
Hey there. Appreciate your stance on adoption. I think that's all great. But I guess I kind of have some concerns about the way you portray yourself to be a little bit pro-life. But I'm just curious why the unlicensed doctor work is still performing illegal abortions.
All right.
Well, Mackenzie, I'm assuming that question's for me and not for Marquita. And I won't back up or apologize to anyone for my very clear record going back to the time that I was elected in 2007 to serve in the legislature, which is clearly pro-life. I've heard something about this particular situation on the way over here today. The only thing I can tell you right now is that the bills that I have voted for as a legislator and signed into law as a governor are the most pro-life bills in the country. And the Medical Examiners Board is an independent board. We are looking now to try to figure out exactly what happened. I don't even think they have received the complaint, so there hasn't been an investigation yet. And until that happens, it's just premature for me to try to guess what happened and what's going to happen going forward. But we are looking into this, and as soon as we are able to report, we will do that.
Emily in Kenner. Hi, Emily. You're on Ask the Governor.
Yes, my question is also for Ms. Walters. I know you mentioned a few steps in the fostering process about training and certification and a home visit, but can you be a little more specific maybe about what types of requirements families might need to meet in order to foster? So, for example, I think the process is a little bit intimidating on maybe, is there a savings amount required? What kind of housing requirements? Two-parent, single-parent households?
Right. We take single and couples, and you have to be able to sustain your own household. So we want families that have an adequate income, but there is not an income threshold. You just have to be able to sustain your home, your household. And we are open to, you can talk to us about this at dcfs.la.gov, and you can go on our website and it will show you all the exact criteria and what we are looking for in foster or adoptive parents.
Thank you, Emily. Steve in New Orleans. Hello, Steve. You're on the air with Governor Edwards and Secretary Walters. Steve,
Hi.
Go ahead.
Hi, Governor Edwards and Secretary Walters.
Hi, Steve.
My class would also like to say hi. Say hi, class. We're a high school class, and we've been learning about the environment. We're in environmental science class.
Yes, sir.
We just want to ask the governor to give us his estimation on the performance of the LDEQ, in particular as it relates to protecting the river parishes.
All right. Before we hear from the governor, where are you? What school?
We're at Landry Walker High School.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for calling in, and hello to your class. First of all, I think DEQ does a really good job managing competing interests as it relates to the permitting and the regulation of industry in Louisiana, making sure that we protect the environment, but we also have the business climate that we want so that we can attract investment and create jobs and so forth. And that's true across the state of Louisiana, including the river parishes. And I will tell you, just last night I had a meeting with officials from Ascension and St. James and other parishes, all of whom were very complimentary of what's going on there and the investment that's taken place and the effort that is being made to protect the environment and certainly human health. And so there are always people on different sides of that issue, they're reasonable people, see things differently, but I think our DEQ does a good job of striking the right balance.
Courtney in New Orleans. Hello, Courtney. You're on the air with the governor.
Hi, Governor. I have started a foundation called Foster NOLA that actually focuses on the teens that you were talking about earlier in the foster care program, as well as, quote unquote, in the system, not just foster kids. And my question to you is, how are you going to help these kids who are aging out of the system to extend the coverage for them to 21 years old? And also kind of wondering why they are starting to de-incentivize the group homes to not allow those to get funding anymore, where those are the homes that are actually able to help these older kids.
Yeah, Courtney, thank you very much for calling, and I'm going to ask, I should say, Marquita to respond to you, because I know that the answers are right there on the tip of her tongue.
Well, we really appreciate any help that you are doing with our teens in foster care. The new federal legislation that was passed actually in 2018 is called Families First Prevention Act, and that is the federal act that is, as you say, de-incentivizing the group homes. It really is putting the effort and money from the feds in the prevention end of our services, trying to keep families together and keep kids from coming into foster care, and under the belief system that kids are best raised in families, not in group homes, that they are minimizing the amount of federal dollars that can be spent on those group homes. So that means the state would have to pick up that burden if we keep children in group homes. Congregate care, group homes are our most expensive kind of care. You are right that that is where many of our youth go, because we don't have enough foster families that are able to take care of teens. So we are looking for foster parents that are good with teenagers. You know, there are lots of people out there that just love teenagers and are really good with them, and we would love for them to be foster parents so we can help get these kids out of group homes.
Mr. Grote in Covington. Hello, you're on the air, Mr. Grote.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. I want to thank Governor Edwards for pushing me into applying for Restore Louisiana. It was a very good experience. Everybody I talked to was very helpful. They actually sent 3 people out to the house. My house is located very near St. Joseph's Abbey, and I had 2 air conditioners that were completely destroyed by the flood. After all the paperwork was done and people came and photographed and measured and did all this, I didn't hear anything for several months. And finally, I got around to contacting the Hammond office. I went there and visited, and I said, nobody ever notified me about this. And they informed me that they had never sent me a certified letter telling me that I was denied and never gave me a reason for being denied.
Mr. Grote in Covington had a question about the Restore Louisiana program.
He did, and unfortunately we had to go to a commercial break before I could really get as much information as I would need to give an answer. I do believe that he provided his information to us, so I'll have someone call him back, and hopefully he'll have his Restore Louisiana file number so that they can check on his particular situation. And I wasn't able to determine whether he ever received any help, or if he didn't, what would the cause of that have been. But we'll get back with him. You know, we had a December 31st deadline from HUD to determine eligibility for reimbursements, and I know that 99% of all the grant determinations, more than 43,000 of them, have been made. We've offered grant funds of over $561 million. And I think the grant awards are about 15,800 thus far. So we're working through this program. We're hoping to get some relief on the duplication of benefits issue. We should know in the next several weeks. If so, then we're gonna have a number of additional homes that we're going to be able to restore as well. But right now, Jim, about 7,600 homes have been completely repaired or reconstructed through today.
You, since we last talked, unveiled a $350 million coastal plan, and there are those who I think rightfully believe this is long-term the biggest issue we have in our state.
It is a huge issue. So 2 million people live and work along the coast in Louisiana. We have the most acute problem in the country as it relates to coastal erosion and the need for hurricane protection. And the amount of projects we're going to have in 2019 will be more than we've ever had in any given year. More than $350 million announced the other day, most of that coming from Go Mesa funding, but we also have $55 million of surplus that we are going to make sure is available to the program, and to make sure that we can do as much as possible as soon as possible, because we have to have a sense of urgency. You know, our plan, Jim, is to invest $50 billion over 50 years. And we have to do the things first that give us the biggest bang for the buck, because we're in a race against time. We have a new leader at the CPRA, and that's Chip Klein, and I think he's doing a great job. He's off to a wonderful start, and I'm looking forward to everything that they're going to be able to do over the course of this year.
In the last few minutes, as in 2:31 p.m., the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry has issued a release indicating it's unhappy with the business taxes in Louisiana, stating that our state has a 5% higher rate than the national average, 49% to 44%. Recently, the ITEP has come under discussion with the development regarding Exxon here in Baton Rouge, ExxonMobil. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, we're in a much better place with respect to the ITEP than where we were. You know, we were the most generous in the country, and we just couldn't afford it. At a flat 10-year, 100% exemption, and in fact, the aggregate value of the industrial tax exemption was 12 times higher than the aggregate value of all the homestead exemptions in the state of Louisiana. But not only could we not afford it, we didn't need to be that generous in order to be competitive. We still have one of the most generous programs in the country, but we give an 80% exemption now. And because it's local taxes that are being exempted, we have local government sitting at the table to have a meaningful voice in that process, and we are tying it to jobs, jobs created and jobs retained, because without jobs, you really can't justify these exemptions. And by the way, we were the only state in the nation where the state unilaterally decided whether an ITEP was granted. In every other state of, I think, 36 who do this, the locals have a seat at the table. So the changes we made were overdue. We will still work with all the stakeholders to see if there's some things about the process that we can change to make it work better. And we're engaging with business and industry across the state of Louisiana. I had a meeting last week, for example, with the Baton Rouge Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors to discuss this. With respect to the lobby announcement, obviously you read it, I haven't seen it, so I can't endorse it. I will tell you that we have, when you look at the state and local tax burden in Louisiana, it's about the fourth lowest in the country. That's what I know about our state. We started the current fiscal year with a $600 million tax cut relative to last year. That had to do with sales taxes primarily, but business pay half the sales tax. So half of that $600 million tax cut is going to benefit businesses here in Louisiana.
877-217-5757 is your number. And before we go to Stan in Bay St. Louis, as far as this move in the legislature to basically put ITEP back to the way it was, based on your remarks, Governor, it doesn't sound like you're going to be a supporter.
Oh, no, I'm not. Look, we're in a much better place with the ITEP program. And quite frankly, the comments that I'm hearing coming from Lobby, from Barack and others, they believe that having the local governmental entities with a meaningful role to play is the right thing to do. And as I mentioned, it now works in Louisiana the way it works in other states. So we're not going back to where we were. We're not going back to 10 years at 100%, both because we can't afford it and because it's overly generous. We can continue to land economic development projects. In fact, we've had the biggest in the history of our state come in since I've been governor. So we're not going back there, but we will talk about process. And if there's some things that we can do to kind of streamline it, make it less onerous, we're willing to look at that.
Stan in Bay St. Louis, you're on the air with Governor John Bel Edwards, your neighboring governor. Hi, Stan.
Hey, hi. I'm a long-term resident of New Orleans. I was, and I'm 69, and I moved from New Orleans because of crime. And the question I have, and I don't know if the governor can answer it or not, but the military have dogs without ammunition and guns. And I understand people's right to carry guns, but I don't understand why the police force can't have dog sniffing dogs that can identify you.
All right, he's asking for, I think, dogs being available to police to combat the crime in New Orleans.
Yeah, Stan, and I apologize. I was trying very hard to listen to you. You were coming in broken, and I didn't understand exactly what the question was. I will tell you that we have Mayor Cantrell. She's got a new police chief in New Orleans. We are working very hard in concert with New Orleans. We have an elevated presence of the Louisiana State Police there. And while there's too much crime everywhere, and certainly that includes violent crime and murders in New Orleans and elsewhere in Louisiana, the fact of the matter is the number of murders last year in New Orleans in 2018 was the lowest since 1971. And so we still got a lot of work to do there and elsewhere, but clearly we're moving in the right direction. To the extent that additional K-9 units can assist in that, obviously that needs to be explored. But I wasn't able to hear the particular idea that you had for involving more dogs in law enforcement and so forth. So I apologize for that, Stan.
What is your assessment, Governor, of the president calling a state of emergency?
Well, first of all, I'm very thankful that the government's going to stay open, that Congress was able to reach an agreement and fashion a bill that the president signed. You know, the biggest concerns that I have, and I feel comfortable right now, is that money that has been appropriated to the Corps of Engineers for specific projects in Louisiana, such as the Comeet River diversion and the West Shore project, doesn't get diverted. And it appears to me that won't happen. although it's technically possible, I believe they're looking at other construction dollars within the Department of Defense and not looking at those dollars. And we actually had I think it was Mick Mulvaney, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, who is also now the chief of staff for the president. He indicated that money would not be diverted from disaster recovery funding for the border security issue, and he specifically mentioned Texas and I think Puerto Rico. But the $1.2 billion that was appropriated from Louisiana is generally part of that same appropriation. So I think we're in good shape, and members of the congressional delegation with whom I've spoken have told me as of right now, they don't believe our funding is going to be at issue either.
But as far as the precedent of calling a federal emergency, is that going to open a can of worms?
Well, I mean, obviously it already has. I mean, there's lawsuits that have been filed. You have members of Congress in both parties, and both in the House and the Senate, who are talking against it. And then you also have some who think it's an appropriate thing to do. This is going to play out, I suspect, over a long period of time. But my focus is right here on Louisiana, because there are enough issues on the plate right here that demand my full attention.
Well, and you have been on the president's good list. Yeah, were you the only Democrat who went to the dinner, the state dinner a few months ago?
I was the only elected Democrat. I suspect there were others who were there. I was the only elected official who had attended. But I think it's important for the governor of our state to have a good relationship with the president, whoever that is, and from whatever party the president comes and whatever party the governor is. So, our state is one that more often than others needs help, and you don't want your plea for help to fall on deaf ears or ears that are less receptive, because there's not a good relationship.
And this is a departure from the previous governor.
Yeah, I always thought Governor Jindal made a mistake because he didn't hesitate to really go out of his way to criticize the president, and I didn't think it was helpful to Louisiana.
Well, thank you, Governor, for joining us.
Jim, thank you very much.
And thank you, Secretary Walters, and hope everyone has a great month and a great Mardi Gras, and we'll be back next month. Stay tuned.